I'm sure. I find Bibles nibbled, their corners consumed in Psalms, Song of Songs, and most of the prophets. But the rest of the Torah they left untouched. The law does not seem to interest them. Leaves a bad taste in the mouth, I expect. You're not convinced? More evidence is in my library. This rodent, well, his whole family, has a taste for the Japanese forms, chewing a slender volume of senryu for supper and then having room for haiku for dessert. Much like a sweet tooth, the more they eat, the more they want. We might even call it an addiction. A diet lacking in punctuation and capitalization must lead to a vitamin deficiency of some sort, and a craving for concrete and avant-garde poetry, especially E.E. Cummings. Every book of his was munched on. 73 poems is now 71. As 2 are lost, fell out when the mice gorged on all the glue. No thanks has become thanks. Tulips and chimneys now is lips and chims. Sometimes it seems they have begun to see themselves as editors, creating new verse by noshing on single words. The rodents, like modern poetry, don't rhyme their lines nor fiddle with rhythm. They attack adverbs and aren't too fond of adjectives either. Colors, surprisingly, have no taste. Already sparse lines become disjointed, freed from their original thoughts, untethered from meaning and emotions. These abbreviated lines look more like a grill for reading ciphers than a poem. Sometimes these critters go too far and gobble up the spicy verbs too. That's when I set out traps and poison. This is war.
Just get one mic up for you, Frank.
Yeah, come on up, dude. I was just judging your height as fast as I could.
Well, I don't think I can read this poem in this hat. Because this is a cowboy poem.
There you go.
And it's not mine.
Yeah, he's got one.
But it's one hell of a poem.
Run the hat. There you go. That will fix it.
Yeah.
Reincarnation by Wallace McRae. What does reincarnation mean? Cowpoke asked his friend. His pal replied, it happens when your life has reached its end. They comb your hair and wash your neck and cut your fingernails and lay you in a padded box away from life's travails. The box in you goes in a hole that's been dug into the ground. Reincarnation starts in when you're planted neath the mound. Them clods melt down just like your box and you who is inside, and then you're just beginning on your transformation ride. In a while, the grass will grow upon your rendered mound, till someday on your mouldered grave, a lonely flower is found. Say, a hawk should wander by and gaze upon this flower that once was you, but now's become your vegetated bower. The posy that the hoss done ate up with its other feed makes bone and fat and muscle essential to the steed. But some is left that he can't use, so it passes through and finally lays on the ground this thing that once was you. Then say, by chance, I wanders by and sees this on the ground. And I ponders and I wonders at this object I have found. I think of reincarnation, life, death, such. Come away concluding Tommy ain't changed all that much.
Past life, one man must do to survive. Don't know if it's wrong or right since my past lives are outside. I used to be an object in an Egyptian coffin, a stick of incense. Napoleon Bonaparte hit me up ever since I had karmic regression. Past lives, what a man must do to survive. Don't know if it's wrong or right since my past lives are out of sight. I used to be an umbrella in London with a fat cigar in Old Havana. I don't know what I reincarnated for. Seen my experiences, seen them all. Past lives, what a man must do to survive. Don't know if it's wrong or right since my past lives are out of sight.
Come on, poets. If y'all want to be heard on the video, you should speak right into that mic. Don't be afraid of hearing yourself real loud behind you, because it's right, the speaker's right behind you, but you need to speak up loud anyway.
Speak up loud.
It's perfect.
Like this machine mind, I will speak to you
Yeah.
loudly. Here's another pineapple poem.
Oh, wow.
Another one. I don't know. I mean, this one's mostly shit. I don't know. If y'all like got better ideas, tell me about it. It's all called pineapple perspicacity. Perspicacity is like shrewdness.
Yes.
And it just sounds good with pineapple. But also, it's the kind of pineapple I'm talking about here, the shrewd pineapple. Pineapple perspicacity gets pulled at by prosperity. These dull little boys keep things running cleanly. The grasshoppers forgot exactly where they had hopped. The dead moved too slowly. Calm and certain calamities came to be unrestrained under umbrella lies created with electricity. That's TV. It's surreal, man.
It is real surreal.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dane. Yeah,
Yes.
Woohoo. Now we know.
They say Jesus was a poet.
Yeah.
I wonder what kind of poet he'd be today. Would he teach the scriptures, philosophize life? Would he rhyme about the beauty of things or free verse the ugliness going round? Would he spit hard verse at slams, open himself up at open mics, or let the people find him on their own? If he was a poet today, would he preach the truth or would he censor himself to satisfy the house? Would he throw his verses at the temple, recite them in the market square or around the supper table? If he was a poet today, would he put out a chapbook or give his words away? Would his poetry be found in anthologies or just the one book found in every desolate motel room nightstand? If he was a poet today, would he speak to the people or to his chosen followers? Would he challenge the almighty power? Would he be an activist poet and wash the feet of sinners, heal the sick, feed the poor, use his poems to spread awareness of the world's ills, or write about pretty flowers? If he was a poet today, would he bow down to the critics on their pulpits, give in to the ivory towers, cave to the masses, or would he write about peace, hope, and understanding? Would his work be preachy or reveal an empathetic soul? Would he write of God's love or of all love? I wonder if Jesus was a poet today, what kind of poet he would be. If he'd be a poet for all, or if today he'd even be a poet at all.
This is one I've written today, and it contains a phrase that seems to be going round. The phrase actually started at Kickbutt on Sunday. Lunch called for, I had to pay first. Customer stood at the counter with a stupid grin. She paid with a pile of change that needed counting. I could feel impatience mounting. Decided not to stay, so came away. Away from there, thinking, fuck it, I'll take my trade elsewhere.
You can tell he's a poet.
Okay, Chris, you made me think of this one. I hadn't read this in a long time. No, it's not the right season, but I think it's the right season all the time. It's called Christmas Ghosts. Bloody footprints in the snow as shoeless, shivering soldiers stumble to Valley Forge to celebrate a bleak Christmas of fire cake and pepper pot soup, 1777. A fetid swamp, even on the eve of Christmas Eve, swallows up those too wounded to crawl to safety as the last campaign of a forgotten war begins, 1814. Besieged on Mule Hill, dying of a lancer's thrust, dreaming of a Pacific Ocean on a Christmas night surrounded by hate, totally devoid of cheer, 1846. Lying cold and wet on a sandy beach surrounding Fort Fisher, celebrating the arrival of Christmas Day with a best friend whose face has just been shot away, 1864. Surrounded, without food, without proper clothing to fight the bitter cold, dashing through the snow in the dark night to retrieve the hand grenades from a makeshift Christmas tree, 1944. Standing a lonely vigil on a snowy night, the silence maddening, the mind's eye seeing not Santa in his sleigh, but a white-clad intruder bayonet in hand, 1950. 8,679 miles from home. Christmas is just another day in Quezon. The gifts of the season are anxiety, apathy, and an abundance that seems like squalor, 1968. Only those who never learned the lesson of Scrooge pursue war. But Ebenezer yielded after only 3 spirits. Millions upon millions of ghostly figures march through our morning light, clad in bronze panoply or rattling rusty chainmail, rhythmically marching in sandal, brogan, or boot, carrying musket or spear, sword or assault rifle, rank after rank of blue or gray, khaki or olive drab, dull brown animal skins, or complex patterns of camouflage, and we learn nothing.
I gotta respond, right? We have a saying in Australia, lest we forget, for the Anzacs, people who died in the First World War for no reason at all, sent by Churchill to Gallipoli and wiped out by the Turks. I think against Turks, something about being killed, which offends me. Yeah, play. Oh, okay. Yeah, so. Yeah. Okay.
Good ears.
So that's lest we forget. So I wrote the counter to it called Lucky We Forget. My grandfather was a cook in Cairo in the Great War. Mortar shells he sent us. We have them on our walls, ornamental, but he is dead. Aren't we lucky we forget? My father fought in the Second World War in New Guinea. He fought for nothing. Nothing did he get. Aren't we lucky we forget? And when it came to Vietnam, I was conscientious in my objection, man. I could have been in prison then. But aren't we lucky we forget everything?
I was at the Kerrville Folk Festival a quarter century ago, and I was in a big canvas tent, the old-fashioned kind of tent that I knew from my childhood, and I was reading memoirs of Ulysses Grant, and realizing that my own life in the history of my country had an interesting intersection in Vicksburg, Mississippi. Grant behind Vicksburg. I heard the story over and over again in my childhood about how I had been tongue-tied, late to speak, grandson of deaf mutes, and when the time came, I found one word, employing it promiscuously, dog. I said it for everything, my mother told me years later. on hot summer days when all her children would gather under the oscillating fan's refuge in her large bed, lying and talking together, and she said the stories of our forgotten pasts. And one day, the story went, I looked up in surprise and said quite clearly, "That's a bridge." It was at Vicksburg, crossing the Father of Waters. I spoke. Vicksburg was the knot. High on bluffs commanding the Mississippi, it restricted that river from full use by the United States Navy from occupied New Orleans all the way north, a water sword to slice off Texas and Arkansas and Louisiana from the Confederacy. Grant tried for months to get behind Vicksburg. Breaking levees and digging canals, moving ironclads into tortuous, tree-shrouded creeks, pushing and searching for a way behind, the blue men labored and sometimes died. I will lay siege too when I get there, cutting tangled lingual thickets until free-flowing language bursts all the seams of rebellion. Grant turned east. After running the batteries, enemies entrenched on the great river both north and south, living off the land, moving purposefully to get behind Vicksburg. I am ready at last for marching, living off the language of my youth, resolute to seize some tongue that's a bridge.
Yeah.
This is a poem out of one of my books. It's called A Lonely Vampire. Vampires get lonely too. So allow this claw to mold around your breast, teasing the nipples, caressing the moistness of your sweet places, to permit these teeth to brush across your silken hair, to settle on the softness of your neck. My loving bite flowing like ribbons through your veins. My aged and aching heart rejoice in renewal, eternal life, the quest for love. My intentions often misread. To be this creature at night, a dark and bloody prince, beauty, soul, and adoration. Love is fleeting, short and bitter. My pain can't be undone. Such is the fate of a lonely vampire.
Have a seat, have a seat. For those that don't know, this is your only chance to be heard by each other, and it goes all night long, and it's round robin. And over there in the corner are books that you steal poems from, then blank paper to fill your poems up, and then how to make your own book. You've got coloured paper for covers, and you've got blank paper to fill up with new stuff, and staplers to make it there happen, so the chip doesn't have to do it reaction. It all happens tonight, but you actually have to activate your own life. The higher the level you can do, the more people will receive you. So, welcome to the evening. Dispossession happens easily, see. Give the young a chance, steal someone else's chair.
I certainly will.
Like, I'm long-winded, you go do one poem, get off, so everyone can assimilate the genius of your haiku. No long-winded, lugubrious introductions to tiny little haiku. And if you want musical accompaniment, we have junior guitarists here who will make things happen. Let's do it. Sure. What a brilliant idea. You're a poet as well as a musician. I trust you. Chipper, you rising up or just falling down? See, everyone thinks it's somewhere else. Unfortunately, here it is tonight. So who's next?
You beat her.
All right, Frank. Here's a real cowboy poem. Tell me that last last one was just, no, thank you. No, see, real modern cowboys, I'm wearing a modern cowboy.
There you go. Yeah.
This one's called Paying the Bills. The sun's finally up, but my workday began at least an hour ago or more. It started before I left the ranch house. I had to rehang the busted back door. I mucked out some stalls in the old horse barn and changed the oil in my ancient truck. I nicked a knuckle getting the plug off. Got a face full of oil. Forgot to duck. The bunkhouse toilet needed some repairs. I changed the float arm and the refill tube. Then I crawled up under the old John Deere to check the belts and give the rods a lube. I spread some ortho on some fire ant hills I found while I was lying on my back. I forgot to use a protective mask, and so I must have inhaled half the sack. I rode along the fence line for an hour, checking for pickets or wire to replace. For my troubles, I got to change a tire, some more grease on both my hands and face. When I inherited this spread from my dad, I was sure I'd been handed the brass ring. Now I can't even sell it because I've spent more than this rundown place could ever bring. But I stand here, leaning against the truck, watching the sun pour gold on that hill crest. All those dirty jobs, the bites and the burns, they pay the bills. That sunset will pay the rest.
Good pay.
Thanks. Faster.
I've been away in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Had a
Big mistake.
very terrible place. I recommend you don't go there by yourself.
Oh,
If you ever go there, go with a group and stay with each other.
Why?
I ain't saying. This little poem is called Main Street Blues. And it goes like this. Good old goblin ever sliced by the line of sight. Human song that he brings home himself despite. I remember you whenever I am alone. When I try to sleep, it cuts to the bone. You that I know no longer exists. But the missing that you somehow just persists. I miss our family and I miss our kids. I miss cooking for them. I missed our first kiss. I missed the playing for you and hearing you sing. I missed hearing the connection, just having the connection that our muse would bring. We sang for our goddess, our sweet Mother Earth, for blue flowing waters we bathed in since birth. We sang for the sky and gave thanks for the air that filled our lungs and blew through our hair. We sang for the lava that goes and gives birth to the land. We sang for the spirit of the love in our hands. But we lost our way. We lost what we had. Since then, I've been mostly so lonely and sad. What we had was so special, but now it is dust. I cry every time I hear diamonds and rust. And now, that's it.
That's a sad song, man.
yeah. You may wonder why the future's here in the old past, okay? This is a try and explanation. 3 people involved are Christina M. Jackson, who knows, K. Abby Khaled. So for AIPF, we 3 ventured to McCullum High School, where 3 groups of students awaited our offerings for National Poetry Month. Bright Writers, the first group, all individuals. They selectively applied themselves to responding to texts like the ones in the corner, with the promise that they could keep them once creative responses occurred. Some wanted to share their creativity out loud, so they did, like I hope they will tonight. When the class ended, few took their annotated books with them. So for class number 2, a similar search for creative responses to text was implored. This time, more subtle answers were read aloud. They left books strewn on the waiting tables. When we went on to further classes, I happened to open a book or 3. Responses are plenty. They had simply not chosen to take the text with them. Perhaps their work will result in some instant anthology tonight. Maybe creative responses are a private code that shares, we are paying attention, but wish to preserve our privacy and autonomy. No matter, the compounded works are recycled at Wake the Dead in San Marcos, and they took books to carry this freedom chain further on. Every day, new poems. Every night, your new moon responses. You're on.
She's jogging this time.
Not too much. I'm kind of slow on the uptake here. Getting up is half the job. Okay. Foreplay. More attention I got on all the rest of the poems are okay. Here we go. I know I got a male audience now. Do you want a kiss, I asked? They give you a Hershey. Small dollop of sweet darkness rising as a hard nipple. You suck it in delicately and smile. I melt in your mouth. That's what I should have done first.
Mike's still hot. Citizens of the United States used to see a flag flying at half-staff and immediately think, who died?
Yeah.
What politician, statesman, foreign dignitary died? A few weeks ago, I saw a flag at half-staff and immediately thought, oh my God, not another school shooting.
Yeah.
Something is wrong when a nation's official symbol of death, the flag flying at half-staff, brings images of school children dying in classrooms from automatic gunfire. Something is wrong when the NRA steps in the way of keeping children breathing. Shouts of Second Amendment rights are raised while adolescents are being lowered into their graves, and that's okay? The flagpole on the west side of the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. is 18 feet tall. One school shooting from now, the flag on that pole will be placed at half-staff, or the 9-foot mark. 1 week after that, it will return to its normal place at the top of the pole. But what about the school shooting after that? I propose that after one school shooting from now, we leave the flag at the Capitol building at half-staff. Leave it. Leave it alone at half-staff until the next school shooting. Then lower it 6 more feet. So that 2 school shootings from now, our flag at the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. will fly 3 feet off the ground. High enough to be seen by Congress every day, but not so high that a first grader could not look down upon it and wonder why his classmates are being shot in cafeterias and on playgrounds across our country. 3 feet above ground is not a prominent place for our respected flag, but perhaps the sight of it flying so close to the ground will keep the deaths of the school children prominent in the minds of Congress in 45. Or perhaps not. So, 3 school shootings from now, I propose a Second Amendment purist dig a 6-foot trench below and around the flag, then lower the flag another 6 feet. And at that point, our flag would actually fly 3 feet below ground. Perhaps Congress would act then, perhaps not. So 4 school shootings from now, I propose we leave the flagpole up, but fill in the trench, bury the flag 3 feet below ground, not 3 feet, 3 feet, which is a yard, not a schoolyard, more like a graveyard for flags and school children. Because at that point, there will be no need for the American flag, only a pole to stand at the ready to honor the dead who were massacred in schools across our nation. So you might think this is a silly scenario. Perhaps. But a disillusioned poet
did see the flag at half-staff and thought of children being murdered, something is wrong.
Cowboy hat. We just learned that.
A much needed conversation. She said his idea of social injustice by taking a knee was to thumb his nose at this country and to not show pride in the flag that represents a country that oppresses blacks and people of color, and that she didn't agree with him. Then she promptly left the conversation, this self-professed Christian Tea Party friend of a friend. And I so wanted her to stay, because this is a conversation that needs to be had again and again. Because until people take their blinders off, until they pull their head from the sand, until they have this conversation and try to see through eyes not clouded with privilege, things will never get better. I wanted to point out that she seemed confused as to what social injustice really is, because what she thinks he thinks is social injustice shows she doesn't really understand social injustice at all. And what's the alternative regarding flag and country? To actually show pride in the flag of a country that oppresses blacks and people of color? And she really can't see what's so very wrong about that? Besides which, she really has missed the entire point of his taking a knee. No, this conversation needs to be had again and again, despite feeling like we're beating our heads against a big, solid, red brick wall.
Saw these giants of poetry.
Yeah.
A small poet there.
That's why you knew the term.
Too late. As he strolls along the savannah, guards flank his front and rear. How many years has this been going on? When he was young, what a stud. And then he grew old, and finally, as we all will do, he died. With his last breath, he took with him the seed to procreate his kind again. There'll never be another Hulk like him. What a grand and spirited specimen of Africa at its finest. He walked tall, huge in circumference, wider than a car. He had no trouble making his way anywhere when he roamed free. Beast feared him as he breathed with each thrust of his front hoof. He snorted and the earth shook. All around stairs took notice not to attract attention, and the thinking man can't imagine standing down to such a mean-looking monster. But yet, on his deathbed, he was less a threat with wasted muscle, time-drained brawn, figure and stature, lane and weight. The pain of infection spread with memories of past aggression, forced loss,